In this lesson, we'll be covering the 3 methods appraisers use to find the value of a property. This video is only an overview, and my goal is to give you a very basic understanding of the overall process and related vocabulary. I promise we will go into more depth later in class. Remember that what we do as agents, either a CMA or comparative market analysis, or a BPO, a broker price opinion, are not the same as what a licensed appraiser can do. They can never be called an appraisal and can never be promoted as a way to find the value of a home. What we do as real estate agents is the equivalent of comparing a Pillsbury crescent roll to a fresh baked croissant by a French-trained pastry chef. When an appraiser gives a value to a piece of real estate, they are actually giving their opinion as to what they think the value is for that one day. It's their professional opinion based on 3 different methods of determining value: the sales comparison approach, the cost approach, and the income approach, each with its own vocabulary and rules. Perhaps it's best to compare this idea of 3 approaches to using a digital mapping app like Google or Apple Maps. Often, when you put in an address, the app doesn't just give you one set of directions, it gives you choices of at least 2 or 3, usually telling you the distance, timing, tolls, highways, etc. for each one. You, the end user, gets to choose which path works best for you. An appraiser is basically doing the same thing. They are given a subject property, and they use each of the methods and their professional skills to come up with their opinion of the property's value. This flowchart lays out the concepts of each method. You can find the flowchart in your class's Google Drive. The most commonly used method for both residential and commercial properties is the sales comparison approach. Using this method, the appraiser finds other properties that are similar to the subject property, called comparable properties or comps. Then, based on the selling prices of those properties, they can decide what the subject property is worth. You should also note that the sales comparison approach is the basis of a real estate agent's CMA. In another lesson, we will discuss what makes a good comp versus a bad comp, as well as the math used to complete a CMA. Here is our subject property. It has 2 floors and a garage. The appraiser then researches to find at least 3 similar properties. Our first comparable property has 2 floors, a garage, and 2 fireplaces. It sold for $330,500. Comp 2 has 3 floors, a garage, and a fireplace. It recently sold for $345,000. And Comp 3 has 2 floors, no garage, and no fireplace, and recently sold for $307,750. The appraiser looks at each comp and says, "This comp sold for X amount with these features. How much do I think it would have sold for if it had had the features of our subject property?" Remember comp number 1? It had 2 floors, a garage, and 2 fireplaces, and it sold for $330,500. Our subject has 2 floors, a garage, and no fireplace. To give our first comp the same features, we need to remove the fireplaces. Specifically, we need to take away the difference in value. In this scenario, a fireplace is worth $2,500. The difference in value between having no fireplace and 2 fireplaces is $5,000. So if comp number 1 did not have those 2 fireplaces, it would have sold for $325,500. Next is comp number 2, with 3 floors, no garage, and a fireplace, and sold for $345,000. Our subject has 2 floors, a garage, and no fireplace. To give our second comparable property the same features as the subject property, we need to first adjust for the additional floor. Specifically, we need to take away the difference in value between having 3 floors and 2 floors. Let's assume each floor has a value of $20,000, giving 2 floors a $40,000 value and 3 floors $60,000, making the difference in value $20,000. We also need to adjust for the fireplace. The difference in value between having no fireplace, $0, and a fireplace is $2,500. With our adjustments, we have found that if comp number 2 only had 2 floors and no fireplace, instead of the original 3 floors and a fireplace, it would have sold for $22,500 less, or $322,500. Last but not least is our comp number 3. With 2 floors, no garage, and no fireplace, it sold for $307,750. Our subject has 2 floors, no garage, and no fireplace. To give our final comp the same features as the subject property, we need to add a garage. Specifically, we need to add the difference in value of having a garage and not having a garage. In this scenario, a garage is worth $12,250, so the difference in value between having a garage and not having a garage is that amount. If comp number 3 had sold with a garage, the sales price may have been $320,000. Looking at all the data, the adjusted values of comparable properties 1, 2, and 3 would be $325,500, $322,500, and $320,000 respectively. Based on an appraiser's professional opinion and the adjusted values of the comp properties, the market value of the subject property could be $321,750. Oh, let me also mention as an important note, the sales comparison approach is the only method used to find the value of unimproved land. To review, the sales comparison approach is based on the idea that an appraiser will choose at least 3 properties that are similar to a subject property. They make adjustments to the price of each comparable property, calculating what they think the property would have sold for if it had the same features as the subject property. Once they make the adjustments, the data is reconciled using a weighted average. The second valuation method is the cost approach. Sometimes an appraiser will pull properties for the sales comparison approach, and they, well, stink. There are all types of unique properties that will likely yield insufficient comps, like churches, schools, even old firehouses, or my personal favorite, the dome home. The cost approach assumes that value can be derived by finding the depreciated cost of rebuilding a property. It may look complicated, but in reality, there are only 3 steps. First, determine how the property would be rebuilt. Second, find the cost to rebuild that property. And third, depreciate it. In step 1, the appraiser has to determine if the property should be reproduced as an exact replica or replaced, made into a similar structure. Imagine this is our subject property. If the appraiser determines a reproduction is the best option, the house would have to be rebuilt with plaster walls. So let me ask, how many contractors do you know that work well with plaster? And what would they even charge? Would it be reasonable? But if an appraiser chooses to replace the structure, modern drywall would easily be used. Thus, determining if a property should be reproduced or replaced could make a big difference on the end result of value. Once the appraiser knows how the property is to be rebuilt, the next step is to price the rebuild. There are 3 pricing options: the square foot method, the unit in place method, and the quantity survey method. In the square foot method, the appraiser calculates the cost of construction and multiplies it by the square feet of the improvement. This is commonly used when potential buyers are looking at new construction. The unit in place method estimates costs by pricing out the necessary materials for the different systems of the house. For example, the foundation may cost approximately $25,000, the framing $35,000, and the plumbing, HVAC, and electrical systems about $11,000 apiece. The quantity survey method is the most detailed of the pricing methods, and also the least common. This method requires the appraiser to break down exact costs of all of the components of the structure, including materials, installation, labor, and profit. Personally, I don't think I would be committed enough to determine the exact number of nails a house might need. Now that we know the cost to rebuild the structure, an appraiser will depreciate it. And there are 2 options for depreciation: the breakdown method or the age straight line method. In the breakdown method, there are 3 different types of depreciation. Physical deterioration refers to the unrepaired damage from the elements or normal wear and tear. It can either be curable, something the owner can fix, or incurable, something that cannot reasonably be replaced or repaired by the owner. Functional obsolescence relates to deficiencies or undesirability in the systems of the structure. For example, a curable functional obsolescence would be a 4-bedroom, 1.5-bath home. For most newer houses, more bathrooms would be a requirement. It is considered curable because the owner could add additional bathrooms. An incurable functional obsolescence would be a split-level home. Even though I personally think a split level is adorable, many people do not. And this is something that the owner cannot fix, for the cost of fixing, taking up the roof and adjusting everything, would be far greater than the value added. Economic obsolescence refers to a loss in value due to external conditions. Because these problems can't be controlled or fixed by the owner, they are always considered incurable. The good news is that this type of depreciation should never be calculated by a North Carolina real estate broker, so there is no math on this exam associated with this concept. The other option appraiser has for depreciating a property is the straight line method. When appraisers use this method, an equal amount of depreciation is calculated for each year of the economic life of the structure. To do this, an appraiser first needs to know the economic life of the building, or the amount of years that a structure is beneficial to the owner. I like to think of this as the shelf life. Imagine you're in North Carolina for an outdoor 4th of July party. An outdoor party under no shelter, and it's 96 degrees with humidity at 88%. If your neighbor brings her famous deviled eggs to the party, how long could they sit out before you consider them unsafe to eat? Well, that is the shelf life or the economic life. How long are those deviled eggs beneficial to the party? Once the economic life is known, it can be divided into the value of the property to find the amount of annual appreciation. Let's say a brand new warehouse is estimated to be worth $650,000 with an economic life of 80 years. That means when it's first built, it would be worth $650,000, but in 80 years, it would have no monetary value. By dividing $650,000 by 80, we can assume that each year the warehouse would lose approximately $8,125 in value. So if the warehouse is 15 years old or has an effective age of 15 years, it would have lost 15 years of $8,125 or a total depreciation of $121,875. Thus, the current value of the building would be $528,125. Oh, that's a lot. So let's review what we just said. In the cost approach, an appraiser first decides how the property would be rebuilt. Is it an exact reproduction or a similar replacement? The second step is pricing the cost to rebuild, either using the square foot method, the unit in place method, or the quantity survey method. In step 3, they depreciate the structure using either the breakdown method with curable or incurable physical deterioration, curable or incurable functional obsolescence, and/or are always incurable economic obsolescence. Or an appraiser could depreciate using the age straight line method, or what I call the shelf life, and where the structure depreciates a certain amount each year. Once the appraiser calculates the depreciated value of the structure, the value of the land is added back in to find a final value for the entire property. Our final method of valuation is the income approach, where the sales comparison approach was best for properties with well-chosen recently sold similar properties, and the cost approach rebuilds then depreciates a property. The income approach assigns value based on how much income the property could produce. The income approach has 3 different formulas for determining value. For larger properties like apartment buildings, the value can be equal to the net operating income divided by the cap rate or the capitalization rate. Or for smaller properties, an appraiser can use either a gross rent multiplier, a GRM, or a gross income multiplier, a GIM. All three of these formulas are clearly based on math, so I'm going to save the details of how this is exactly calculated for a math class. I will mention that a capitalization rate is similar to a potential rate of return on a real estate investment. So those are the three approaches used by appraisers to determine the value of a property. The sales comparison approach, when an appraiser uses the adjusted values of comparable properties to estimate the value of a subject property. The cost approach, where the appraiser finds the depreciated cost of the structure and adds back in the value of the land. And the income approach, when an appraiser determines value based on the potential income that a property may produce. The appraiser now has three values from all three methods, and they will reconcile that data to form their opinion as to an exact market value for the property. A reasonable question is, how does an appraiser do that? And to that I say CYA. No, not call your attorney this time. It's call your appraiser. They've gone to appraisal school and I have not. I hope this broad overview of the three methods has helped, and in class we will dig down deeper to each of the methods. But everything is a lot easier to understand if you have a general feel for the bigger picture. As always, if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you in class.